It was a calm Sunday afternoon in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. The birds chirped lazily in the trees. A light breeze stirred wind chimes on front porches, and the smell of fresh-cut grass lingered in the air. It was the kind of day people imagined when they dreamed of the good life in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood. Maya, a hardworking black woman in her early 30s, had just pulled into her driveway after a grueling 12-hour shift to the hospital. As a nurse, her job was intense on a good day, but lately, every day felt like a battlefield. Still, she wore a calm expression, grateful to be home. She looked forward to nothing more than a hot shower, a warm meal, and a few hours of peace. Since she was too tired to stop by the store, Maya had placed a quick online grocery order while finishing up at work. A few snacks, some fresh produce, bottled water, and dinner ingredients. Nothing fancy, just enough to get her through the week. Right on time, the delivery driver rolled through the quiet neighborhood, scanning house numbers quickly as he tried to finish his route. Unfortunately, Maya's house number, 7231, was nearly identical to her next-door neighbor's, 7321. He didn't even realize his mistake. In his rush, he dropped the grocery bags on the wrong doorstep, Karen's doorstep. Karen, the president of the Homeowners Association, lived alone in a spotless white colonial-style home with manicured hedges and motion-activated security lights that clicked on even if a squirrel dared cross her lawn. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen, not because they liked her, but because she made sure everyone knew who was in charge. Karen was the self-declared sheriff of suburbia. She took the HOA rules as gospel, and she enforced them like a personal mission. Lawn too long? Expect a warning. Trash cans out 30 minutes too early? She'd take pictures and email them to the board. Mailbox needs painting? She'd send you the hex code for the approved shade. She was always watching. So when she opened the front door and saw two brown paper bags sitting on her porch, her eyebrows furrowed. She looked around suspiciously, expecting to catch someone sneaking up her walkway. Instead, she saw Maya walking toward her yard with a tired but polite smile. Maya stopped a few feet away and said, "Hi there. I think those groceries were supposed to be delivered to my address, just next door." That's all she said. Calm, respectful, no attitude, no raised voice, just a simple mix-up. But for Karen, it was as if Maya had committed a felony. She narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me? Are you accusing me of stealing?" Maya blinked, confused. "No, ma'am. It's just, my order says it was delivered, and I think they may have left it here by mistake." Karen crossed her arms and said, "Well, they're on my property now. You shouldn't be walking up on people's porches uninvited." "I didn't mean to cause any trouble," Maya said patiently, motioning to the bags. "They even have my name on them. Look, right there, Maya L." Karen didn't even glance at the label. Instead, she said, "You people always think you can take whatever you want." And that's when Maya realized something else was going on. Before she could say another word, Karen turned on her heel and stormed into the house, slamming the door behind her. Through the window, Maya could see her snatching up her phone and dialing furiously. Maya stood there stunned, her arms at her sides. All she wanted was her groceries. What had just happened? Inside the house, Karen was already ranting into the phone. "David, you need to get over here right now. Some woman is threatening me on my porch. I don't feel safe." David was her son, and not just any son. He was the police commander for their city's department. Karen didn't mention that Maya was unarmed, calm, or simply asking for her own property. She didn't mention that the bags were clearly labeled. All she said was that a strange woman had come onto her property aggressively and demanded her groceries. Of course, she left out the part where she had opened the bags, sorted through Maya's groceries, and then decided to claim them as her own. Even the bags of fresh kale, almond milk, and plant-based protein, things Karen would never eat, were now part of her twisted little power play. By the time Maya returned to her home, she had no idea that a storm was already brewing, one that would drag her into a viral scandal, shake the neighborhood, and expose a hidden rot beneath the surface of that picture-perfect suburb, all over a bag of groceries. But the real mess was just beginning. Karen's son, David, arrived less than 10 minutes later, loud engine, flashing headlights, and all. His black SUV came to a hard stop in front of Maya's home, tires screeching slightly as if he were responding to a high-risk crime scene. But this wasn't a call for backup or a police emergency. It was a petty grocery mix-up, and yet David stormed out of his vehicle like he was leading a raid. What Maya didn't know at that moment was that David wasn't just some overprotective son. He was the police commander of a local precinct, a man with decades of power under his belt. And unfortunately, the apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. As he stepped out of his car, he didn't look around, didn't knock on Maya's door, didn't even pause to ask what was going on. He went straight to confrontation. "You!" he barked, pointing directly at Maya, who had come outside after hearing the car pull up. "What do you think you're doing in this neighborhood? Harassing my mother?" Maya, stunned, took a step back. Excuse me?" "You heard me," he snapped. "You threatened an elderly woman on her own property. Who do you think you are?" Maya was genuinely confused and taken aback. "Sir, I live here, right next door. I simply asked for my grocery order back. It was delivered to your mother's address by mistake." David ignored her explanation entirely. His face twisted in a sneer, and he began walking closer, too close. "Don't play innocent with me," he growled. "My mother was terrified. She said you were banging on her door, demanding things. That's called harassment." Maya, still trying to stay calm, held up her phone. "I have a grocery receipt right here. Look, it even has my name and order number on it. This isn't about harassment. It's about a mistake." David didn't even glance at the phone. He leaned in close, towering over her. "Let me make one thing very clear. If you ever step foot on our property again, I will personally make sure you're charged." At this point, neighbors were starting to peek out their windows. A few even stepped outside onto their porches. Whispers began spreading. Something was happening at Maya's house, and the police commander was yelling at her. Maya's heart raced. The tone, the posture, the complete disregard for her side of the story. It was clear David wasn't here to help or resolve anything. He was here to intimidate. And that's when Maya did the only thing she could think of to protect herself. She reached in her pocket and pulled out her phone, hitting record. "Back away from me, please," she said firmly, lifting the phone between them. "You're on my property now, threatening me, and I don't feel safe." That one move flipped the switch. From inside her house, Karen burst out again, red-faced and furious. "That's it," she shouted. "You're recording us now? This is harassment. I'm calling the police." Maya stared at her in disbelief. "You're calling the police on me? For recording your son threatening me?" Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. She was being painted as the aggressor while simply standing on her own porch, unarmed, alone, and politely defending herself. Meanwhile, David stood beside his mother, arms crossed, glaring at Maya as if she were a criminal. Not a neighbor, not a woman, not even a human being. And the irony? He was the police. But even as Karen barked false claims into the phone, Maya didn't back down. She kept recording, her voice calm, her posture steady, because deep down, she knew the truth was on her side. What she didn't know, yet, was that help was already on the way. And what would happen next would shock the entire neighborhood. Just 5 minutes after Karen's dramatic 911 call, the flashing red and blue lights lit up the quiet cul-de-sac. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the street, finally pulling to a stop right in front of Maya's home. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, Officer Ramirez and Officer Lewis. But the moment their boots hit the pavement, their confident stride came to a sudden halt. Their eyes locked on David. They froze for a split second, exchanging glances with each other. The tension in their faces was impossible to hide, because they both recognized him. David wasn't just anyone. He was their commanding officer, the police commander. Ramirez shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his belt. Lewis, slightly younger and newer to the force, whispered under his breath, "That's the commander." Ramirez gave him a slight nod, his jaw tightening. They both knew this wasn't going to be a normal call. David, arms crossed and chest puffed out, wasted no time. "About time," he barked. "Handle her," he said, jerking his thumb toward Maya like she was some wild animal. "She's been threatening my mother. She's aggressive, disrespectful, harassing an elderly woman." Lewis looked toward Maya, who was standing calmly on her own porch, phone still recording, Groceries untouched beside her. There was no aggression, no threats, just a woman trying to protect herself from two people clearly abusing their power. Ramirez, taking lead, walked up slowly and gently gestured toward Maya. "Ma'am, can I talk to you over here?" he asked. Maya nodded, relieved someone was finally treating her like a human being. They stepped a few feet away, out of earshot of Karen and David. Maya lowered her phone just slightly, still recording, and spoke quietly. "I didn't do anything wrong, officer," she said. "My grocery delivery was dropped at the wrong house. I went next door to ask politely. That's it. Next thing I know, I've got a woman yelling at me, her son threatening me, and now I'm being accused of harassment." She pulled up the receipt on her phone. "Here's the order. It has my name, my address, and a timestamp. I even started recording when things escalated." Ramirez looked at the screen. Everything checked out. He nodded slowly. Then Maya opened her video app and played back the footage. David shouting, stepping on her porch, accusing her, threatening to arrest her for harassment, and making a clearly racially loaded comment about people like her. Ramirez's expression darkened. Meanwhile, Officer Lewis approached David and attempted to de-escalate. "Sir, with respect, commander or not, we need to follow protocol. We're going to gather statements first." David snapped, "You don't need statements. I already told you what happened. Arrest her. Now." Lewis held his ground. "We can't do that without probable cause." David stepped in closer. "Too close. I gave you cause. Are you questioning a direct order from your superior?" Lewis looked stunned but stayed calm. "I'm following the law, sir. Not orders that don't have legal grounds." A few of the neighbors had now gathered quietly on sidewalks, watching the scene unfold. Some were filming with their phones. Karen, who had stayed near her porch, suddenly shouted, "Why aren't you cuffing her? She could have had a weapon. Look at how she's acting." Ramirez returned to the group and spoke clearly for everyone to hear. "We've reviewed the evidence. The grocery order was delivered incorrectly. Miss Maya did nothing wrong." David's eyes narrowed. "Are you siding with her?" Ramirez didn't flinch. "I'm siding with the facts." For a long moment, there was complete silence. Then David pointed a finger at Ramirez and said, "This isn't over." Ramirez looked him straight in the eye. "You're right. It isn't." And with that, the two officers got back in their cruiser. No arrest, no charges, and began quietly making calls. Because this wasn't just a neighborhood squabble anymore. This was a potential abuse of authority by the police commander himself. What started with a bag of groceries had just escalated into something much bigger. That night, Maya sat on her couch, still shaken by what had happened. She played the video back again and again. David's aggressive posture, his threatening tone, the way Karen shouted in the background as if she were the victim. Maya had done nothing wrong. Yet somehow, she was treated like a criminal just for asking for her groceries back. At first, she wasn't sure if she should even post it. But then she thought about how many times things like this happen in silence. How many people don't get the chance to tell their side of the story. She remembered the fear she felt when David, a high-ranking officer, stood over her and threatened her with arrest for something she didn't do. So she hit post. She uploaded the video to both TikTok and Instagram, captioning it, "When your neighbor calls her cop's son to threaten you over your own grocery order, and he turns out to be the police commander. Hashtag Karen, hashtag abuse of power, hashtag Black Lives Matter." She put her phone down and went to bed. By the time she woke up the next morning, her phone had hundreds of notifications, and it hadn't even been 12 hours. The video had exploded online. Tens of thousands of likes, shares, and comments. People from all over the country were watching and reacting in disbelief. Some of the top comments read, "This is exactly why we don't trust the system. She just wanted her groceries. The fact that he's a police commander is terrifying. Karen needs to be banned from every HOA in America. Thank God she recorded this." Hashtags like hashtag Fire David, hashtag Justice for Maya, and hashtag Stop Karen Culture began trending. Influencers with millions of followers started reposting it. Civil rights activists began demanding accountability, tagging the city's police department in their posts and calling for an immediate investigation. Local news stations picked it up first. Then national media followed. Reporters camped outside the quiet suburban neighborhood, trying to speak to neighbors, city officials, even David himself. The public pressure was mounting fast. By the end of the week, the police department released a short statement confirming that Commander David Harper had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Behind the scenes, things were even worse for David. It turned out Maya's video had sparked more than just outrage. It triggered a closer look at his personnel file. And that's when things got messy. Whispers began to surface about previous complaints of misconduct. Officers who once stayed silent were now speaking up anonymously to reporters. Some mentioned inappropriate comments. Others said David had a history of intimidating citizens, especially people of color. The police union stayed quiet, but the people, they were loud. Meanwhile, back in the neighborhood, things weren't looking good for Karen either. The HOA board was flooded with emails and voicemails from residents demanding action. Many said they no longer felt safe or represented with Karen in power. Some revealed they had past experiences with her, where she acted aggressively or tried to use HOA rules as a weapon. The board responded quickly. They called an emergency vote to determine whether Karen should remain HOA president. And the decision was swift and clear. Karen was removed from her position. Some neighbors even posted about it online. One said, "For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Karen's reign is finally over." Maya, meanwhile, stayed quiet online for a few days. She needed time to process it all, but the support she received was overwhelming. Strangers sent her kind messages. Others shared their own stories. Donations poured into a fund set up by one of her co-workers to help Maya move if she chose to, or to just take a break. In just 1 week, a simple grocery delivery mistake had sparked a national conversation about racism, power, and accountability. And both Karen and David learned the hard way. In the age of smartphones, the truth has receipts. In the weeks that followed the viral video, everything changed, not just for Maya, but for the entire neighborhood. What started as a case of grocery misdelivery had grown into a powerful moment of reckoning. And as the dust settled, the consequences for everyone involved became crystal clear. For Maya, the support she received was nothing short of overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the country. People of all races, backgrounds, and professions expressing love, encouragement, and solidarity. Many thanked her for being brave enough to stand up and share her story. Others admitted they'd gone through something similar, but never had the courage or the proof. One woman wrote, "You stood firm, calm, and graceful in the face of hatred. You showed the world what quiet strength looks like." A GoFundMe, started by one of Maya's co-workers, quickly went viral, raising enough money for her to take a break from work and even consider moving to a neighborhood where she wouldn't feel constantly watched or unwelcome. But Maya didn't run away. Instead, she stayed, and her neighbors began to rally around her. Her co-workers at the hospital threw her a small surprise celebration. There were balloons, snacks, and a handwritten card signed by over 50 staff members that read, "To Maya, for showing us that standing up for yourself is always the right thing to do." Maya finally felt seen, not just as a nurse or as a neighbor, but as a person. And for the first time in a long time, she felt safe in her own home. Meanwhile, David Harper, once the untouchable police commander, was now under intense scrutiny. The Internal Affairs investigation revealed that this wasn't his first complaint. Far from it. In fact, over the past 8 years, multiple citizens, mostly people of color, had filed reports accusing him of racial profiling, verbal intimidation, and excessive use of authority during traffic stops and minor infractions. Until now, most of those complaints have been quietly dismissed or ignored. But in the wake of Maya's video and the national attention it sparked, the department could no longer look away. City officials held a press conference and confirmed what many already suspected. David Harper was officially terminated from his position, effective immediately. The statement read, "The City of Eastfield does not tolerate discrimination or abuse of authority in any form. We are committed to restoring public trust and transparency in our department." Though David tried to defend himself publicly, claiming the situation was taken out of context, The video spoke louder than any excuse. His career, once full of promise and privilege, was effectively over. But perhaps the most unexpected turn of all was what happened to Karen. With David gone and her HOA title stripped, Karen found herself alone. The very neighbors she once micromanaged with passive-aggressive notices and harsh emails no longer feared her. In fact, they began to openly reject her. At the next community block meeting, one she wasn't invited to, residents discussed plans for a new neighborhood watch system, one rooted in inclusion and mutual respect. Maya was asked to join. People who used to nervously avoid eye contact with Karen now waved enthusiastically at Maya. Children who once weren't allowed to play on the street were now riding bikes and chatting freely with her in the front yard. Karen, meanwhile, sat alone on her porch most days, watching a community that had finally moved on without her. She had become what she feared most, irrelevant. In the end, justice didn't come with sirens or handcuffs. It came in the form of truth, community, and a woman who refused to be silenced. Because Maya didn't just stand up for herself. She became a symbol of what happens when everyday people decide that enough is enough. And as for Karen and David, they learned a lesson the hard way. You can abuse power, but you can't outrun the consequences.